What is going on, guys? My name is Danny Sully, and in this video I'm going to explain to you what you should never do with your Roth IRA. And if you like this content and you are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button below. Now, my goal for this video is to help you understand mistakes that you could possibly make with your Roth IRA and how to perfect it for your own personal good. So if you're ready, let's get started. Now, the biggest thing with Roth IRA is to understand what you're investing into, as I'm going to discuss later in the video. Now, when it comes to investing in a Roth IRA, the IRA is individual retirement account. This means that you're planning to not pull out until you retire, because then it can be tax-free and you're all set for your retirement. Now, the first most important step in order to do this is to not withdraw any money until you're at that age of retirement. The age of pulling out a Roth without any penalties is 59.5, but if you do withdraw, like I just said, you're going to have to pay a 10% penalty, and you're also going to have to pay whatever capital gains, the profit that you make on your investments, the income tax bracket for that. Now, it's really important that you don't want to do this, and in order to prevent yourself from having to withdraw, make sure that when you're putting this money in, you don't need it. So if it's $10, $50, $100, however much you can contribute, make sure that at that time, you're not going to need that for a long time. That you can be financially stable without needing that little bit of cash or however much you contribute. So what I'm trying to say is don't put all your money in this one basket at once. Whereas if you were to put your whole check into this account, you're going to have to withdraw it and then pay even more of a penalty, which will even put you into more debt. So my biggest tip for this is to put in whatever you can and be financially stable with that and not have to worry about how much is in that account or not. When you're valuing how much cash you have in your investments or any type of portfolio or your accounts, don't even think about adding a Roth IRA to that. This account needs to be completely ghosted to you where all you do is put money in. So as it sounds, this is a pretty safe account that you're going to be investing with. So obviously my second tip is going to be don't trade penny stocks. If you're to day trade or swing trade small stocks, small companies, and think that it's going to go up and make you a lot of money to retire with, first off, you're not even going to get that money for a long time. And second off, if you lose money, you can't put more in. So you're relying on the fact that it's only going to go up, yet 90% of investors lose money in the stock market. So remember this fact because your goal is to retire with as much as possible, and by doing this you're increasing the risk of losing that potential gain that you could have by the time you retire. In order to retire and not lose like the 90%, don't trade penny stocks and get into something safe. The only way that you're going to guarantee a long-term effect from the compounding and actually have this worthwhile for you is to invest in ETFs or mutual funds, index funds. History and statistics prove that by doing this over the long run will work no matter what. Penny stocks don't have a lot of data in their financial statements, and that's another big reason why you shouldn't invest in them. Companies that don't have at least a few years of strong data in their finance statements, you should never invest in. Now, what I personally look into when it comes to my Roth IRA account is I look into big growth companies. Yes, it's not the safest things, and I'm not a financial expert, so I don't personally recommend it. Companies like Apple with $93 billion of cash flow on the side still have really good profits and revenue, even through COVID, everything that they're going through. They pay solid dividends. That's just a few things that makes them intriguing to me. And the same could be for like Tesla, where the speculation for that stock used to be really high and it didn't have much growth. But the fact that now it's profitable and the company is improving greatly, this alone makes the company a really good growth investment, but you have to look at also what they're doing on the side, like how much they're producing, how many cars they're selling every year, and how much more they can do in the next year, and their potential for years on after that. But the most important thing to take away from your Roth IRA account is that it's an IRA. It's meant for you to retire, meaning that you don't have to pick what I just said. Just find out what you're most comfortable with and that you can see a long-term growth in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, however many years you have until you pull out. Just make sure that because this is a retirement account, to be safe about it and not do anything risky, and just trust your gut with what you invest with. Which leads to the next mistake of trying to short-term trade. If you know what you're doing, short-term trading in a brokerage account is completely fine, but when it comes to a Roth account, you don't want to do this. And yes, unlike penny stocks, you can do this with a company that has a strong finance statement and a lot of good data, but you still want to play the risky card because if it goes down, you might be like, oh shoot, like I got to get out of this. Like if there's bad news, but the company has good data, that doesn't mean you need to pull out. So don't even think about the short-term trade. When you're thinking about investing in something in this Roth account, only think about investing for more than 5-10 years. And I know that doesn't sound fun, but this is for your retirement and this is the most strategic thing to do for yourself. So if you do pick a good company or ETF or anything like that, make sure that you don't short-term trade. So don't even look at your account because if you do, you might have emotions where you want to get rid of it and you might want to sell it. Just because there's temporary bad news doesn't mean it's a time to sell because you lost. Stocks in the market all go up and down, and that's just how it works. Seriously, before you get into an investment in your Roth account, make sure that you can see yourself owning it for at least 10 years. If you can't see yourself owning it for more than 10 years, you shouldn't invest in it at all. And you don't want to do any options as well. Options are the most riskiest things you can do when it comes to investing, and in this Roth account, that's the last thing you want. So hear me out, no trading options. And now the fourth mistake, which is more of advice than a mistake, but that's the fact that it's an individual retirement account, but say you have a spouse, you can contribute for her. You can help her max out hers or his. Now the maximum that you can put into this is $6,000, but if you have enough to keep going over that and you want to contribute more, you can't. But if your spouse doesn't have enough or she needs help with hers or his, then you can put more into his or hers. It's also important to know that if you're making more than $139,000 a year, you can't put any into your Roth IRA account. And if you are married and your combined household income is over $206,000, then you can't put any into the Roth at all. And just an additional fact that you might not know is that the limit is $6,000, but if you're over 50, you can put in $7,000 a year. And back in 2018, it used to be $5,500 and $6,500 if you were above 50. So like I just said, right now it's $6,000 for under 50, and in a few years that might be $65,000, $7,000, or even $8,000. Now the biggest mistake is to research your investment, because if you're not researching your investment before purchasing it, you're basically just guessing. Whenever putting money into an investment, you need to make sure that it's the right one for you and the long-term one that you can see yourself investing with. Researching your investment is the #1 way to make money off of your stock or ETF or whatever you invest in. That is the #1 way. Now when I say this, I say to look at their investor relations, their finance statements, their cash flow, their balance sheet. Make sure you're looking at everything on their finances, and that over the past years that company's profitable or they're growing, or if you're looking into ETFs, make sure that that's a good sector you want to look into. If Warren Buffett never researched his investments, he would not be rich at all. Now if you're investing in index funds like S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial, you don't necessarily have to research into that, but if you're looking at different index funds you've never heard of, look into what's inside of that kind of fund. If you're trying to be really safe with this account, which you should because it's your Roth IRA account, the top options are probably going to be the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial. Now my key takeaway for this video, investing in a Roth account, is to look for a long-term investment and don't even look at it. And that's why I truly believe that this is the best way to go with your Roth IRA account. It's also very important to start as young as you can. I started my contributions at 19, but I wish I did this younger. And if you are below 18, all you need is for your parents to sign off for you. It's really crazy because if you start even 1 year later, you can lose out on tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm assuming the people that are watching this want to perfect their Roth IRA, or you're just at the beginning phase where you want to make sure that what you're doing is the right way to approach this Roth IRA. So if you haven't started yet, save up as much as you can and start this Roth account as soon as possible. Especially as a beginner, you don't need to go out and do other trading, especially riskier ones, in other accounts, where this is the first one you should start with. Now if you want to be above average and retire before 60 and do the things you've always wanted, then start this Roth IRA account as young as you can. Now it's also important that as a young investor, brand new to the game, you want to start with picking stocks that are long-term investments and try to figure out what's the most strategic way to approach it. Now the next mistake that you want to prevent yourself from doing is to not utilizing your IRA. You want to utilize it. The government gives you this one account with this one specific amount that you're allowed to contribute, and you can't do any more. There's a reason why they do this. It's because if you were able to do as much as you could and pull out whenever you wanted with no penalties, people would be rich and be able to do whatever they want. Now yes, they make it so that there are penalties if you pull out, but if you follow all the rules that they have and you do this strategically, by the time you pull out, you're going to realize that not having to pay taxes is actually a huge deal for this. Which is why the government created this one account and has restrictions on pulling out early. Now if you're out there thinking you don't need to utilize a Roth IRA, or that you don't want to, or that there's no point, you have to realize that if you expect your taxes to be higher in the future, you need to start this now than later. Because right now, let's say you're a millennial and not making a full-time income, your taxes aren't going to be as high as they are by the time you're 50 or 60. So by putting money in now and start compounding it and allowing it to grow where you can take it out tax-free, instead of paying like a 15-20% on a 401k, this Roth IRA won't have anything. The reason it's so beneficial for you is because the majority and everybody wants to have a better job over years. Where if you were to get less pay in 20-30 years than now, it wouldn't be as much of a deal to you. Yes, the tax-free is nice, but it wouldn't have as much of an impact. Now, the last thing you need to avoid is by not having a goal. When it comes to retirement and personal finances, you need a goal with everything. You can make this very conservative where it's actually possible, or you can shoot yourself to the stars and go for that really high goal. Whatever it is, the only way you're going to achieve something is if you see yourself doing it and you have a goal to accomplish it. So if you want to be a millionaire in 30 years, 40 years, then have that goal and do whatever you can to achieve that. Work harder, spend an extra hour of working every day. The only way that you can achieve goals like this is by raising the bar to as high as you can. As high as you think you can't even reach, because that encourages you to go out and work harder. Set a really high goal for yourself and work really hard early on, and it'll pay off for you. Let me know what you guys think about that, and if you have any questions or concerns, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching.